My first chapter title is Geo-spatial, and I made this up from Michael Bell's help. Reflection on this is like the big macro scale, because I say reflection on the macro scale takes us beyond the metropolitan present into deep historical time on one scale, and outward into the solar system on the other. Deeply in its former cultures might span thousands, if not millions of years. But if we look at the Earth from above, during the Aurora Borealis, for example, we can see it in a new way today. Unlike ancestors of northern cultures who attached mythical and religious significance to their appearance, we now understand the phenomenon as a collision of charged particles which originate from the sun arriving on the Earth via the solar wind. In fact, if you read your science magazines, you realize that the northern Aurora Borealis is simultaneously happening on the South Pole, and it takes 3/4 of a second for these magnetic fields to reach the South Pole. So this is a kind of analog. Venus, the Earth's nearest planetary neighbor, is almost the same size as the Earth. Its greenhouse effect clouds are made of water and CO2, which contain a surface temperature of 860 degrees. Venus once had water, but it all dried up. It's all steam. Venus is in retrograde rotation. That means the sun rises on the west and sets in the east. It has no moon. My theory is it once had a moon when it had water, but the moon left due to the massive greenhouse climate effect. Connecting this macro vision of any landscape, connecting this to my past work, there's this edge of the city work, which really tries to look at the city from the aspect of the landscape, to understand what is urbanism from the edge, from where the landscape somehow is. And I think today there is nowhere on Earth that these issues are off the map. The Earth is a kind of system that we have to look at it in a complete way. It is odd that few urban planners speak of, okay, this next section is called Experiential Phenomena, and I try to avoid the word phenomenology because we already have a book called Towards the Phenomenology of Architecture, which Bill Stoppard published. And rather than that million-dollar word, it's really about experience that we're talking about, and especially on the level of urban planning. It is odd that few urban planners speak of the importance of phenomenological characteristics determining the qualities of urban life, about spatial energy and mystery, about qualities of light and atmosphere. The subjectivity of urban experience must be held in equal importance with the objective and the pragmatic. And this must be from the beginning of each project. I'm pressing the wrong buttons because I can't see. So the notion of shadow and how shadow creates space, the notion of reflection, the notion of something that's happening in 3 dimensions because of the material interplay and the light interplay. Which really, when you think about urban planning diagrams, none of these factors really come into play. These are factors that are bound up in the actual design, the materiality of things. Another category is called the spatiality of night. And to think about Times Square at night, on a rainy night, and how the entire space changes, especially if you have kind of wet streets, this color, the kind of creation of a completely different spatial sense. So like in the 19th century, when we had gas lamps, we didn't have this. So to be able to design urban places with this right from the beginning, to think about this, even when you're just working on the first stages of a project, what will it be like? How is the space created at night, especially the people who live there? This happens to be a dormitory. The lights are on at MIT all through the night. Another category is urban porosity. I have a little Walter Benjamin quote for urban porosity. In Walter Benjamin's Reflections, there is a description of the urban porosity of the city of Naples, where he observes porous architecture in which building and action interpenetrate in the courtyards, arcades, and stairways to become a theater of new and unforeseen. Porosity is the inexhaustible law of the life of the city, reappearing everywhere. And we take it sometimes to small scale, but certainly on a large scale, and I'm going to show the Beijing project in detail. But on another project I won't show in detail, I was told by some critics at the Iowa College of Art and Art History in Iowa City that this project, even though it's planar in its composition, has more porosity. You can walk through in all directions. It becomes a route on campus. It becomes a place for picnics, and I think they're having some kind of a picnic here in this shot. It's not clear what's going on. There's a library cantilevered over the water pond. But the notion of a fuzzy-edged building, a building which actually isn't like a block on campus, but it's fuzzy, that you pass through it in different ways, that it's porous. Sectional urbanism. The Z dimension has always interested me, and as a younger architect, I played around with this problem of some kind of architecture which could inhabit bridges, or some kind of architecture which was not planimetric, that somehow became, let's say, a quality in the third dimension. So it's X, Y, and the Z dimension became very, very important. This is 1990. This is the edge of the city, Phoenix, Arizona. Parallax was a word I was interested in since 1990. The idea of how the body moves through space, but how architecture that you can see through, that's connected in 3 dimensions, somehow becomes a new kind of metropolitan urbanism. So I'm going to show you in detail how we develop that. Enmeshed experience, partial views. You might have an idea of a building, but the actual experience of the building in a city, you just see partial views. So why not make this one of my theoretical platforms? That in fact, partial views, and there's this Helsinki museum, like you know, this is how you experience it. There's the post office brick, this glass building, and suddenly, you know, and I think there's a kind of excitement about the partial views that I really enjoy.